Here we are, riffing while black. I'm here with my friend, my colleague, my partner in crime, Dr. Lawrence James. How you doing, my brother?
Brother, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good. It's a beautiful Thursday. How about you? How you been?
It is a beautiful Thursday because the sun is out. It's about
There you go.
82 degrees here. It's not storming
Why?
and
Wait.
raining like it
What?
has
Why
been.
that smile on your face? So every time you talk about the weather, bro, you be like, you got that low key side eye smile going on. I'm like, and I'm starting to get to a point where I don't really appreciate it because I'm like, I see you. I see what you're doing, KP. I see you, bro. Because you like, you're like an old black man, boy. You know my weather better than yours, boy. Yeah. I'm like, you wrong for that, man. You wrong.
We have to revisit this around, I don't know, July, August. I
Right.
might be over here
Right. When it's
suffering.
10 down there in Austin, and you're like, that's what you get. I ain't gonna lie though, you know what? It's like 73 today, and I'm like,
That's
it's
pretty
it's
good.
like perfect pleasant, so great. I can go work in my yard. I'm like, I'm laying down dirt and sod, like trying to grow some grass. Can I tell you, black man trying to be like I'm trying to go back to my Louisiana roots, growing shit. I was like, man, this hard work.
It
I'm
is
like, it's
hard
hard
work.
work. I got this PhD for a reason, man. I was like, not, but I'm
Yeah,
equally cheap. So I was like, I'm gonna do
yeah.
this myself. And if I can make it to all my friends, be like, I grew my grass. It's like I grew my grass.
My
You see
my
that?
my
Just
my
green,
my excuse is generational trauma. Every time all that heat,
right? You're like,
back-breaking work, and
right,
shucking corn and picking
right.
cotton. I'm
God, look,
The thing
look,
is, people act like black folks don't like being outside. So no, it was a status thing. We got tired of working outside for y'all.
exactly. You don't have to now. You like, he's like, hey, look, that's what I'm gonna break that out next time. I was like, how come you don't want to be outside? I was like, generational trauma. Oh, generational trauma.
My ancestors.
People up, my ancestors. Right. No, that's even better. You're like, how come you don't want to be outside?
Well, first of all, back
And
in
then
the
just walk
80s,
away.
because my Jerry curl didn't do like I wanted. So
Right. You're like
that's
messing up
why.
my do, my ancestors. I'm like, what else? I was like, oh my God, that's too
Like the
funny.
sisters who sleep like this so they won't mess up
Right,
their
you're right.
head.
Which seems really uncomfortable, let's be honest. I'm like,
I'm thinking like all kinds of neck trauma.
right. You like got herniated discs from the shit. You're like,
I mean, if I sleep funny with the pillow just a little wrong, I got a crook in my neck for at least a day or two. So
dude, look,
I'm not
me,
messing
me,
with this. So
me and the
I'm
Tylenol are like best friends because I'm like, oh, I got a little crick in my neck. I can't feel it. I'm like, oh,
crick is the worst too, man. See, crick is just unnecessary. But anyhow,
it is
yeah, we have a series of topics other than us going
much
back
more,
and forth.
much more serious than grass. Yeah.
So I'm gonna start off with a side eye. We're gonna end it with the side eye, but I'm gonna bring it up first because I'm still annoyed with Kevin Hart and his bull, bruh.
Has
had to,
has he come out and said anything? Because I see
you know
everybody
what?
asking, has he
Even if
said
he
anything?
did, even if he did, I'm
Mm,
still I'm annoyed. Is so he's gonna be our side eye because I mean, you put it out there. So is he our new step and fetch it? But
right?
and then I want to talk about NAACP's call for a boycott, or specifically for black athletes to boycott Southern schools, where they
Yeah.
have decided to, I was going to say gentrify, but basically gerrymander the basically how they vote, for how folks are voting because of the
Right.
recent gutting of the Voting Act. And then another topic I thought was great was the apology that our black Pope. Some people don't like to acknowledge that, but he got a little sprinkle.
Hey
We're
man,
using the one
he my
drop
people
rule.
down. He my people's down in Louisiana, man. Them Prevosts. I know some Prevosts now. I was like, okay. I was like,
Go on both sides. That's how we do
right.
it, in
No, like,
Louisiana.
unfortunately, that's probably true. It's like on both sides of that Prevost. It's like,
But he had an apology, which I think was really powerful for
yeah,
around slavery, and the Catholic
yeah,
Church kind of roll around that, not kind of, but their deep role
yeah.
and profit.
He's talking to Chicago's mayor today, by the way.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah,
And last topic, if we can get to it, which we say every time, but want to talk about, review the movie Ladies First. It's a movie that came out on Netflix with Sasha Cohen. If you remember, he was in the Borat movies. It was totally
right.
ridiculous, but he's all about social commentary, and this one is about gender. And I don't know, I thought it was worth a watch, but we'll get to that a little bit more later on. But those are the topics that we're gonna have, and again, we're gonna go in on Kevin Hart with some fierceness. But let's do a grounding card. Here you go. Actions for diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm taking our blank and blank. Actions for diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm taking our blank and blank. You want to go first, or I can go first? It's up to you.
I'll take a shot at.
Uh-huh.
I may have said this before. One of the actions I'm taking is absolutely to speak truth, at least from my perspective, on all issues, not just issues around diversity. But I think that piece about showing up in full and authentically is really important as an exemplar for what the kind of inclusion that we're seeking. The other thing I'm working on, and this is actually a long-term project that ain't come to fruition yet, so I'm gonna be very clear about that, is working across communities in real authentic ways. Because I think we talk a lot about it, we pay lip service to it. And I think the action part is, what are the steps to be able to effectively work across communities? Because I think the desire is there, the intention is there, but that piece often falls back into the action steps are about what can I go back and do at home with my own community versus how are we collectively working? And so I've got some thoughts and ideas that I've been playing around with around how to actually empower what I would consider true collaboration that brings everybody to the table working on issues that we can all agree are important to solve.
Cool. I like that. Immediately, what you made me think about is there's a project I was someone inquired about, and they asked, "Hey, could you bring someone from the LGBTQ community on the project?" I'm like, "Oh, great!" So I actually sat down and had a conversation with a longtime friend. He used to work at University of Texas. Their name is Shane Wally. Been around for a while, speaking on issues, a variety of issues in the LGBT community. But I wanted to make sure that they were brought in on the project.
Yeah,
And so to me, that's a real action, reaching out to people in this space and finding ways for collaboration. And as I think we talked about before, we had a Plates and Perspectives event last week at St. Austin Catholic Church here in Austin.
that should have been one
Really
of the
great
topics.
experience. A really great experience. People walked out feeling really good and making connections and doing exactly what I hoped people would
Awesome.
experience. So
I
I'm
love.
super excited about that. So those are kinds of actions I think are that I'm taking in small and
Mm,
hopefully larger ways. So,
yeah.
but hey, let's hit this first topic about. I don't know. I feel like we can do Pope Leo a little easier than the other one. So let's start with Pope Leo. What was your reaction when that came out in the news? You know, he had a whole statement about slavery and everything. What was your
Yeah.
response?
Honestly, I think my first reaction was, well, the black Pope going in for it. I ain't gonna lie. I think that literally was my first reaction. I was like, go on, Black Pope, do your thing. Do your thing, Black hands. Because I actually do think that's a subtext for some of this. A couple of things came to my mind. I think Leo, while he might not say this, comes out of a tradition of liberation theology in the
Hmm.
Catholic Church, which speaks to a lot of issues around not just discrimination, but how do we treat the least of our brothers, the poor, etc. And I felt like what he wrote was kind of in that tradition of, I think, being humble, but also being open and expressive, and frankly, righting a wrong. I mean, the history, I was reading some stuff about the history of the Catholic Church. And full disclosure, I was raised Catholic. I do not profess to follow any particular religion, but even to this day, I still am very much culturally Catholic. So these things do, in a weird way, even though I'm not religious, they actually matter to me. And that the church is acknowledging in a very real way its error, and in such a document as this,
Mm.
I think matters. It really does matter. And it makes me wonder what additional things, like this week. So, sidebar, I'm on this thing right now about taking action steps. Like, it's just a thing that I'm on. And so I'm like, all right, bro. I'm like, because you're my homie, you grew up down the street from me. But I'm like, homie, okay, that's cool that you wrote the letter. I'm like, we can write all the letters we want. What is the church actually going to do
Mhm.
beyond this? So I'm like, that's cool, that's good, but what else? And so my challenge to me, to the Pope is great. And, and what are and I
Well,
need to study the document because I think there are implications or there should be implications that come out of this for doctrine, behavior of the church, because you sort of admit the church was complicit in proselytizing and helping governments, to enslave. But I don't know that you fully go to sort of acknowledging the church's role as an enslaver, not just in word, but in action. And so what does that mean? I mean, I don't think the Vatican is like contemplating, reparations, or anything of that nature, so in real terms, I mean,
I don't think he talks about reparations in the letter, and now I'll be honest, I didn't read the whole letter, but I read commentary about the letter. And I mean, it's pretty comprehensive as far as kind of acknowledging the history and the multiple roles the Catholic Church was involved with, including owning slaves themselves, justifying countries in their,
pursuit.
oppression of people
Yeah.
and all
Mhm.
kinds of stuff. But I think what's critical here as well is that remember the UN came out with a statement not too long
Mm.
ago
That's a
that
great point.
that basically saying slavery is wrong. It's one of the biggest evils of our country, of our history as a people. And there was only three countries, if you recall, who didn't sign
Yeah.
up on it: Argentina, the
Mhm.
U.S., and Israel.
Mhm.
Those governments did not. If anything, they voted against it. Every other
Right.
country, including Iran,
Mhm.
South Korea, North
What
Korea,
hey, bro, what you trying to say? What you trying what you
Muff,
intimating?
motherfucking Iran, bruh. Well, they oppress their women like there's no motherfucking problem. Saudi Arabia, where
Wrong.
they step on motherfuckers' necks, particularly black folks, where there's a whole history of racism
Yeah.
from sub-Saharan Africa versus Northern Africa.
Mhm.
Even these countries said, "Yeah, slavery's a bitch,
Mhm.
and it's a problem, and
Mhm.
it's a scourge of our world." And so here comes the Pope, not much longer, saying, "Yeah, Dudo, and look at what we did that was problematic too." And you know what? I'm sorry. And so for me, contextually, it makes a lot of sense. It's just mind blowing that we got basically a Muslim state that's in war with our own country, and the country I live in can't acknowledge that slavery is a problem, along with Argentina and Israel, who all have a history of racism and are not willing to acknowledge it for some nonsense like, well, we don't like to categorize oppression. No one's categorizing fucking oppression, you dumbass.
Right. We just saying. It's funny, before we got onto that, I was having a conversation with a friend of mine. We were actually in a weird way talking about this similar issue. In particular, I mean, I don't want to digress too much from Pope Leo, but we were talking about the inability of people to say I'm sorry. Seems endemic. Is that the right word? Endemic? It's not pandemic.
Of our
Endemic.
president? Yeah.
Well. It's interesting because what I was saying to her was, I was like, 47 is clearly has exacerbated a trend line that I think pre-existed and has taken lying to and lack of ownership and blaming to a whole nother level. So let's be clear about that. But I think it also permeates or has been permeating in the culture, right? It's like you make a mistake. I mean, I always say this. I was like, I have the curse of the double first names, Lawrence James. People call me James Lawrence every freaking day. And we talked about this. It freaking drives me crazy. And when I point it out to people, and I try to be very, very nice about it, they will never acknowledge that they made a mistake. It was like I didn't say a word. And it always strikes me that, you know, the cover up is worse than the crime. I'm more
Mhm.
pissed off that you couldn't acknowledge that you messed up. Because all you have to do, literally, the answer is, anybody who's listening to this, the answer literally is, well, I'm sorry,
Oh, my
Mr.
bad.
J. That's it. I apologize. I misread. Whatever it is, that's all it is. And, my own action for myself is I'm trying to be better. It's like, I messed up with a client the other day. And I was like, we weren't supposed to meet, but I forgot to tell him. So he wrote me a note. He's like, hey, I apologize for missing our meeting. And I ain't gonna lie. The easier answer would have been like, yeah, you take all the, you messed up, sir. I'm like, and I could have let it go. And I was like, that ain't right. I'm like, I was like, well, actually, I messed up because I didn't send you the Zoom notice and I couldn't meet anyway because I had a doctor's appointment. I said, that's my bad. That's not your bad. or at least we equally got this, right? So maybe for you, me, and for our audience, maybe part of what I want Leo to take action. Because
Yeah.
I will say this: the Catholic Church, you sort of know what they really own. Because when they really own something, there's the letter, and then there's the, I forgot what it might be, the encyclical. I'm a bad Catholic. That's why I don't practice no more. But they send a thing out that says, and here's what this means, and here's what we're gonna do.
Yes. They're
I'm
good
waiting for
about
that.
that. They
They're
are
real
good
good on
about that.
that. Right. They're real good on that. So we ain't got that yet. So I'm
No.
waiting for that. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna know you real serious, Black Pope.
Anyone who might be confused out there, say, "I didn't know the Pope was black." So, well,
Exactly.
we're invoking the one drop rule.
He got more than one drop though.
Well, how many drops? But we're
He
using that
got a few.
rule.
Like
You
his dad,
got 4, 5,
he got
12.
he got a half, man, because his granddaddy from Haiti, and I believe his grandmama is from the DR, Dominican
But
Republic, and I
but
think
this
she
but
from the black side. She
she
ain't from the
is.
Spanish side.
All that is true, but you know that the problem with the one drop rule is that how big is the bucket?
You know
So
you ain't right. You know you ain't right.
I don't know how many buckets we talking about here, but we applying it in this situation and as the Black Pope. But even the fact that regardless of that, he has demonstrated as in his short term so far a willingness to push back, to take statements. But like you said, beyond just letters that are
Mhm.
appealing to a lot of folks,
Right.
and then contextually, it's a part of I think a bigger movement
Yeah.
to acknowledge slavery and the
Mhm.
ongoing problem with human trafficking.
Yeah.
A willingness to say, okay, what are we going to do about it? And I think it has to do with who he's appointing to different positions, bishops
Yeah.
who are appointed.
It's
I think
exactly.
I mean, there's a reason why I think he's the Pope because I think the previous Pope
Mm.
laid the groundwork for someone like him
Yes.
to take
Agreed.
over. And I think
Agreed.
the people he's appointing across the globe is a reflection again of a move in a very different direction because I think what you're seeing, and I think we touched on this, I think people are feeling because of the isolation and desperation and the lack of dignity that people are experiencing and the upheaval with the economy. I think a lot of people are going back to church because they're in search of something. Now, it doesn't mean they
Yeah.
want to be religious, but they want to be part of
Right.
a community where
For
there's
community.
clarity. And I think this kind of clarity from the Pope on this topic is what people really are appreciating. And so it's not even an issue of agreeing or disagreeing. It's just
Yeah.
let's just call it out.
Yeah. Exactly. You said a couple of things. Let me just add a couple real quick. One, I think the point you raised about the context, the UN, and now the Pope, I think that matters. I don't know where it's going to go, but I thought that was such a prescient point that you put out there. That contextualizing what Leo has done, and by extension what the church is attempting to do, is really important across the globe, especially as we see sort of a rise of what I think is more fascistic and autocratic behaviors across the globe. I also think, whether we want to agree with this or not, religions do influence many people's thinking and belief structures. I have friends who are professed Catholics, and probably in the American context, one issue voters, because they're staunchly anti abortion, in part because the church says so. And there's not much else beyond their thinking, is like that's what the church says. And so I don't know that this issue around slavery will rise to that kind of doctrinaire, but if it could or would, that's a massive, or potentially, I would say it will be, it's potentially a massive influence on a generation. I mean, as one who is proselytized for liberation theology, my belief is, if the Catholic Church in particular had really done its work in embedding concepts of liberation and liberation theology into its manifesto as a church, the world would be in a very different place because of what it would be proselytizing for and saying antagonistic to, right? That ain't right. I'm like, that's not how we supposed to be living. But anyway.
Well, I want to transition to the NAACP's call, which I think I personally, this comes up periodically, this idea of black athletes, but this doesn't have to be just
Mhm.
black athletes. It could be any
Right,
athlete
right.
who decides that these southern states, and we're talking
Mhm,
about all of the southern states with no
mhm.
exception,
Right.
or from Texas, here where I
Mhm,
am, to Florida, to Virginia, and all the other ones. who have
Alabama,
decided that I'm sorry?
Alabama, Mississippi,
Alabama,
all
Mississippi. But they've all in some way or another have decided that, gerrymandering, the maps to favor their own political party because of decision that came out of the Supreme Court, who basically said, well, unless you can prove that they had intent to be racist, then it's not racism, which is a bunch of horseshit. Because I
I
mean,
think
you
put
can't
it quite
never know the
simply.
heart of a
How you gonna know the
person, but you can know the result of it. But besides that, this idea that I mean, they're trying to capitalize on what happened with Target. You have the church community who said, "Hey, we're going to protest
Mhm.
Target. We're not going to shop there." And I'll be honest, it's been so long for me personally shopping at Target. I just don't go there anymore. Not because I don't think it's a go place you should go anymore. It's
Right,
just there's no need me for to even go there.
right, right,
It seems to me, and which was kind of the point, right? Because a
right.
lot of black folks we were going there. We were
Yeah,
using our products were being sold there, and then when they took a reversal on DEI, we got pissed off, and so people are saying this is the same kind of thing that can happen within college athletes, athletic sports. If we decide to say, you know what, we're not playing this game with y'all anymore.
right.
I'm not sure if that's going to be the way to do it. In all honesty, man.
Yeah,
But when you look at the Voting Rights Act and how it actually came to fruition, black folks of all folks of all different backgrounds, but particularly black folks, were dying. Our neighborhoods were being burned
yeah,
because of the protests that were going at the time. And so the question for me isn't whether we should protest or not. It's issue of what are we going to do to bring attention to the problem that this
yeah,
is as manifest.
right.
And unfortunately, I'll be honest, I don't mean this to say this about all black athletes. It's not true all the time. But I think these universities do such a great job of coddling and putting a protection around them with money and women and privilege and all the things. And you're taking people from
Mhm.
sometimes from small towns who haven't had nothing, and
Yep.
they give them everything.
Mhm.
The idea that I would buck that,
Yes.
it seems like a big ask.
I
But
think it's
I
a
think what people are NAACP is saying is like, not let's not just look at how this is impacting you, but your community. Our
mhm.
voting rights are being trying to be eliminated in some ways. And so I know I think it's a big ask, but I think the point is we have to do something to create tension or bring attention to folks who think this isn't an issue and say, no, 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 this is an issue and y'all need to pay attention. And the only reason you're gonna pay attention is because your little football team is gonna suck this coming year because Bob is not on the field anymore.
So I'm really torn about this because the idea let me start. Part of what I'm torn about is why are we, and I'll go broader than the NAACP, why are we as a black community putting the burden on our children for this? That bothers me. I think we're all a part of it. And I heard a couple of pundits sort of saying, well, black children and black women have always been at the forefront of the struggle. And I think that comment misses a very salient contextual issue. Why were black children at the forefront of the civil rights struggle? Because their direct education was
Hmm.
being, and many
Yeah.
of these children were being barred from going to school. It wasn't like they was choosing to go out here and
Hmm.
be on the front lines. The front lines came to them in terms of their. So I think that's a bit of a misnomer. This is not. So let's stop making that what I believe is a false comparison. But as a community, and I think this is a part of what you were alluding to, KP, as a community, this might be an avenue. What are the other avenues? Because I think 99.9% of the black community is left out of this particular idea. You talked about the boycott of Target and other big retailers who were backing away from DEI. That was a community based, at least my perception. That's a community wide, community based attempt to create change. No one was overly burdened by doing that. Now, what we're saying is we're going to put all the onus for change on the shoulders of a bunch of 16, 17, 18-year-old, 19-year-old, 20-year-old kids who some may want to take that on. And there are black athletes who are like, I'm going to an HBCU because I want to do this. And that's a choice. And those choices have implications. So I'm a little concerned about the idea. I'm also concerned that it feels like this conversation is skewed in ways that I'm personally uncomfortable with. And not because they might not move the needle, but let's be honest, Ohio is doing weird stuff, you know, so the
Indiana.
North, yeah, Indiana on gerrymandering. So, I've heard rumor possibly like Nebraska, possibly Iowa. And that's not to say that, maybe all the good black athletes go to California. Uh, that's fine. I mean, I hope some of y'all come to my alma mater, the university. We need a good football team. But and I came out of the diversity, out of the anti-apartheid struggle. So, I was getting arrested at my university, trying to get the university to divest its funds out of South Africa. So I'm not against protest. I'm not against young people protesting. I think there's a more organic movement that needs to be had, and I don't know that this is it. Um, in the way that it's being framed just feels. I know I'm waffling here, but the framing feels really problematic to me.
I think it definitely can be problematic. What I don't know what's going on in the background. What I'd like to see is a bunch of people from the NAACP and other organizations, because as you know, it wasn't just the NAACP. It was oftentimes SNCC and other organizations.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and what I think about is if you go across the South, and just forget Tennessee and Kentucky. They don't count in this conversation right now. We're talking about deep South,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got
Louisiana, Mississippi,
you. Louisiana,
Alabama,
Mississippi.
Georgia, and let's
Right. Are you
include
in
Florida.
places where you lose all the consonants, when you
Well,
talk?
yeah, and this is where the good football teams are because the other ones suck. The point is, if you just focus on those places, who's
Mhm.
going in to talk to these students? Who is there already a grassroots movement amongst them? Are they already asking questions? Are they talking? I imagine they might be. I don't know, but their loyalty oftentimes is split. Right? They have their own families that they're loyal to, but they also have their coach
As
that
they
they're
should be.
and their
Absolutely.
friends on their team. So the question for me is there a conversation being had with these folks? Because what I think about is apparently, now you remember Herschel Walker.
Mhm.
Herschel
Right.
Walker.
Right. Ran for what?
He had opportunity back when he was in, I forget, it was high school or college. I think it was high school, where he had opportunity to protest something, some racism that happened.
Mhm.
But kind of like Michael Jordan, he decided that fighting racism wasn't his priority.
Mhm.
And when he was threatened by, not threatened, but kind of given an ultimatum by his coach because it was between Herschel Walker and another black athlete. The other black athlete says, "I'm protesting." Herschel Walker says, "I'm not protesting. I'm not getting involved." And he's basically been consistent since then.
Right.
And so I feel like there's going to be that kind of challenge across these teams where
Yep.
you're going to get some who are going to be like, "Yeah, we're down for it. We're down for the
Mhm.
cause. We're going to make this happen. Yeah, I
Mhm.
want paid, but whatever."
Right.
And there's gonna be another group of people, it doesn't have to be a majority, it can just be a quarter. Who can be
Mhm.
like, "Look, I need to get paid. I got bills, I got responsibilities. I don't think it's that big of a deal,
Right.
and blah, blah, blah." And so I think that that conflict requires someone to come in or someone's to come in, have real conversations with these folks. I would hope that before they declared this, that they had a plan of action
Mhm.
more than just kinda making a declaration of what folks should be doing. Told people what to do, but actually are engaged in some meaningful way on the ground,
Mhm.
talking to folks, because I think that's where the real change is gonna have to happen, and, unfortunately, we have a long tradition of sacrificing our children for these kinds of things.
Well, this is true. This is true. And as you were talking, I was thinking about Colin Kaepernick.
Mhm,
Movement that came out of his kneeling and protesting, and how many athletes joined him, and many, black and brown, and many
mhm,
who did not. He becomes the sacrificial lamb at the end of the day. But some things moved as a result of what he brought forward. And I
mhm,
think and maybe a part of the difference that I see there versus what's happening with the athlete boycott is that felt more organic and from within, one by one person, but multiple people who eventually understood where he was coming from and joined in. When the students at Northwestern years ago, wanted to unionize, that was largely, it was a multiracial coalition of black and white athletes who eventually got us what we have in a weird way with NIL now in sport. But they felt like they were students who felt like they were being mistreated and went about trying to create change that felt a bit more organic. this doesn't feel organic. This feels like we telling some kids what they should or shouldn't be doing.
And only black kids, only black
And only
students.
black kids,
Maybe
right?
that's a
Exactly. Well,
challenge.
I'm glad you said that because I thought about that too at first. I was like, so why are we only saying black kids should make this sacrifice? And again, it's the NAACP, but I'm like, why aren't we advocating that all athletes, you know, fight this fight?
Let it out. Yeah.
Right. Shut the shit down if that's really what's going to happen. Now, and there are other avenues and there are other organizations you're looking at like, okay, how are we getting out the vote? So yeah, you move the lines. I can't remember what the statistic was, but like 11 of the black congressmen weren't who are currently in DC in the House are not in majority black districts.
Yes.
They're winning and
Yes.
competing in non-majority districts. So I'm like, how do we help those folks too? And that's what I meant earlier about. I think it's an and story, not an or story.
Right. Right.
That
Right.
it's like, yes, this is a part of a multi-pronged strategy for impacting this issue of gerrymandering. But how do we do that in a comprehensive way? And again, I get it because it's athletes, so and there's lots of money, so it's a big wow, sort of a la the March on Washington's a big is a big thing, but there's all this grassroots stuff that's happening as well in addition to it. And so I haven't heard the broader strategy to impact this issue that I guess would make me more comfortable with putting these young athletes on the line, and let's be real clear. Not all of these athletes matter in this equation.
Unfortunately.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing, right? Because
Because
you can have
Herschel
a bunch of
Walker would have mattered.
he would have mattered. He would have
You know what
mattered.
I mean?
And it's
So there
and
are
in
some
his
athletes that carry more.
situation, I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, and some athletes carry more weight. Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar carries weight,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because of who he was in that moment. And so Jim Brown in that moment, right? The greatest football player at that time is saying, this some bunk, I'm not gonna do this. I'm not, even the Sidney Poitiers and Harry Belafontes, these are iconic folk. Be silly. Stephen A and Kevin Hart carrying some weight.
Well, and we may not be able to rely on them either, but I
Well,
think
there's that piece too.
right, but why your point is still the same. What are the key people? Because you can get a bunch of black folks to agree, but if they're third, fourth string, unfortunately,
Don't
it
nobody
may
give a
not have
damn.
impact. But you can make the argument by starting somewhere, by making
Yeah,
some kind of statement that maybe eventually, because you never know which one of those friends are
right.
good, the roommate of the star player,
That's right. Exactly.
you know,
It-
or who grew up in the same town that so and so, or whose parents go to the same church or whatever.
right.
So you got to start somewhere. But you still have to have a critical mass. And so my
Yeah.
hope is that on the ground, NAASP, local organizations, I mean, at minimum, what they've done is put in the bug in people's ear to say,
Yeah, that's true.
think about it.
Yeah. 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 It's in the ethos.
So, but we do, as we love to say, we need a plan.
We need a plan, bruh, man. Come on now. I'm like, I appreciate you put out the letter, but I'm like, come on, what's the plan?
So what and we go, I mean, and I guess it's the same that happened when they had the bus boycott back in the day. They're like, what's the plan and how we getting to work? Because I got
How we
bills.
getting to work? I got bills. Right.
But that's what
Still
we
got,
can
I
learn
gotta go.
from,
I
right?
still got man's house to make that money.
That's what we can learn
Yeah.
from, right? We can learn from these past movements, struggles, not necessarily the old ones, but even more recent. Like what we learned about the whole Target thing to make
Right.
that effective. How do
Exactly.
we get people? Yeah,
Exactly.
I have no idea, but I imagine there's something to be learned. My hope is that there's more than just a little bit of talk. But I do want to transition a little bit to our because I want to get to him. But before we get to Kevin Hart, I want to talk a little bit. I know it's a bit of a switch, but let's talk about the movie Ladies First, if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well,
Ladies first. Everyone,
ladies
I heard that.
first.
I about that song. Ladies first. Ladies first. The Queen Latifah.
No,
Who is it? I'm bad. I'm bad on the rap music thing. Who is it?
you might be totally on point. I just don't. I lost.
No, no, that's
I I
Ladies first.
appreciate Queen Latifah more as an actress than as a rapper. Let's just say that.
That might be a whole nother program.
I love her. I wasn't, she had a couple of songs and that was it to me. But, she was part of the history of our legacy around hip hop and rap. But real quickly, Ladies First is a movie on Netflix, and it's basically about this dude who is like sexist, misogynist. And if you see a clip on online, it's basically the scenario. It's kind of the reverse, where the guy is there as a kind of gender kind of strategist specialist who's supposed to, correct the misgivings of these women who have this terrible idea. And then it's basically a boardroom, and it goes exactly the way it typically goes as far as sexism directed towards women, but this one's directed towards men. And the reason I wanted to talk about it is because a sister came out saying she didn't like the movie and she thought it was predictable. Wasn't anything about the like kind of the things, the scenarios that they came up with that would made it enjoyable. And my response to not to her particularly, but just I said, well, one, it's a romantic comedy of sorts. And so I've never known a movie like this that's not predictable. We all know what's gonna happen. Whether Mel Gibson's I forget the name of his movie, it was like this. Everybody knew what the movie was
Right,
gonna
right. At
go.
the end,
And and then and the
he gonna get the
scenarios they
oh,
came up
girl
with,
get the girl. Right.
yeah. And the scenarios they came up with to basically illustrate how bad sexism is in our culture by showing how sexism comes up directed towards men. Again, cliche.
Yeah. Right.
But I'll tell you why I think a movie like this was probably even produced and put out there, because we have a problem with this thing called the manosphere. There
Mm.
are men out there
Oh, you
who
brought
are.
it I like how you brought it back full circle right there. I
Yeah,
like
I mean, I think there's a huge problem with men. I mean, I think I told you about this idea that there's men who are pissed off about abortion because they believe the person who was promised to them or who was their soulmate was killed through abortion. So now they're against abortion because they for that reason. And I'm just like, y'all need to stop.
you nice.
So
I think you're a little psychotic is what I think, but keep moving.
could you imagine the
That's some
level of
crazy
depression?
ass logic right there.
Could you imagine the level of depression you experience when you're like 40, 30, 20, whatever, and you're like, I'll never meet the special person I'm supposed to because they were
Right.
killed by abortion.
40 years ago, they were killed by abortion. You capital T F.
And so,
You
wh-
tripping.
so while predictable, why cliche, it was
Mm.
still for me. I watched the movie. It was funny. I thought they teased out not just the sexism, but some of the racism and the
Okay.
dynamics. But again, it's not a A24 production. It's not like supposed to be this like thing, right? It's supposed to be this kind of tongue in cheek. It's
Yeah.
Sasha Cohen,
I was
okay?
like, first of all, it's Sacha Baron Cohen, right? So
I mean,
it's
and
not
and
gonna be
and
that deep.
and so for me, I feel like it was I wouldn't say it was necessary. I would say
Okay.
they made some money because sexism is still a problem, and the version of that we're seeing
This is
and kind
real.
of confronted with today is something that I think this thing kind of pulls out a little bit. Because I
Mm.
mean, it basically is like they used the marketing guy, but they could have easily used a tech bro. That would have been
Mm.
cliche, but they could have done that, but they didn't.
Yeah.
They picked
Mhm.
something adjacent.
Right.
But I don't know. I don't know. What's your thoughts, man? Because I was just, I'll be honest. I watched it and I laughed and I thought, okay, we're good.
Well, then it works, and I ain't gonna lie, I have not seen it, and I've seen the advert for it, and, my muscle on movies is kinda like I wouldn't even say my bar is high, it's like, "Is that gonna entertain me?" And I ain't gonna lie, I don't particularly find Sasha funny. Like, Borat to me is the dumbest movie ever created. God bless those who love it, but I'm like, "This is the stupidest shit.
You try to tell
Why?"
me when they made cheese out of the mother's breast milk, that wasn't funny?
No, it was not. I'm
You
having
like,
more fun
no.
laughing at it than listening to you describe it. Now that's funny. I was like, "They made food out of breast milk." I was like, but I'm not a huge, like,
Ridiculous.
slapsticky kind of a person, so I'm like,
Right,
it just doesn't resonate for me, so
right, right.
but I think this the conversation, though, as a conversation starter around misogyny in society, there's a little bit of me that's kinda like, "Hey, however we can get that conversation started, is useful that we can begin to address and create awareness around it. And some of my species are really thick. It takes a lot, I mean, might be all the way to like blunt force trauma to the dome to like have something sink in. So I'm like, if this gets you to think about your place in the world, of course, now it's a romantic comedy. So dudes ain't gonna, I mean, here's the downside. Dudes ain't gonna be watching it unless they probably, interested in the topic or with a lady and are being made to watch it. So I'm like,
Like
I
that.
don't know. I'm like, but I was kind of intrigued because I was like, this sounds kind of silly, but might be entertaining.
It is silly. That's the thing. You can't take it too seriously, despite the fact the topics that they're. So I'll give you one example of something that I thought was illustrative of the problem that we're dealing with around sexism. And so now, mind you, the whole premise is that he hits his head. Now he's in a world that's dominated by women. That's the whole
Got
premise, right? So it's reverse of the
it.
reality. It's like a multiverse thing. And so one of the things that he had to do as an employee, because he went from being head honcho in charge of everything to being just a regular staff person.
Mhm.
And so the goal was to get out of there. And so one of the things that he did to get out of there and to move up an organization was to basically try to placate to the women. So he started
Mm,
working out. He was
mm,
cycling. He was
mhm.
eating vegetables to lose some weight. He was doing all the things to
Okay.
basically curate and sculpt his body
Mm,
to look a certain way. He changed his wardrobe. He got his hair done. I mean, so it was really illustrating all the things that women go through, consciously or
yeah.
unconsciously, to
Mhm.
make themselves more appealing in a male-dominated
Tell me.
space.
I
And so, and even like offering in himself for, sexual this and that,
mm,
and feeling pressure to, and just like all the minutia that
mm,
this character was going through, I was like, oh my God. As of a man, I mean, I'm not saying I don't primp and stuff at times. What I'm saying is that the level that
yeah.
this character had to go through, which is an example
Right.
they're trying to do for women, I was like, oh my God. So that's a lot. And so I feel
That's a
like
lot.
there was those moments that you could build some awareness potentially. I'm not
Yeah.
saying I didn't know that. I'm just saying it was illustrated in the way
It
that
brings it back
brings
to
it
the fore.
back, right?
Yeah. And I think that's those moments are always important. Like things kind of bring you back and remind you and maybe add some depth, because I think to your point, I think as men we sort of understand the depths that women go through, in some of those instances, and I'll channel Anisha when I say this, but I don't know that we completely understand some of the things around, fear and, not just psychological safety, but physical safety that women go through that we as men are pretty oblivious to. Right. In part because we can be. I mean, when I see things like that, that often bring, especially that aspect of womanhood to my mind. I'm always that always takes me aback. Like, yeah, that's that. Wow, okay, that's a lot. Either how do I not participate in that? That kind of thing has always comes back to me. And so, that men, could ever be even for a moment in that discomfort, and create that kind of emotional awareness. 'Cause I think intellectually, men are reasonably aware. I said reasonably, maybe it's less, but if that's only reasonable, our emotional awareness is probably like, you know, slim and none. And I think
Well,
we have to be
I'm just being logical. Yeah, that's it. You
right. Exactly.
understand
Well,
that.
that's it. It's like, well, that's not logical. It's like, no, because it's emotional. Because that's the wrong tool for understanding this.
No, of course it is.
Right. Right. Exactly. Exactly. So you give it a thumbs up.
Well, if I would go to the Robert Townsend, I'm gonna get you sucker. I will not give it the middle finger. I'll give it
Mm,
a thumbs up.
thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Audience, go watch.
Yeah, yeah, it's interesting. It got us talking about it. So, but hey, I want to do a engagement card before we get to the last topic, and our engagement card might fit well for our conversation. I could be an ally for equity in the workplace by blank. I could be an ally for equity in the workplace by blank. And I know for me, I do consulting with organizations
Mhm,
and stuff. So but on just the day-to-day kind of things, I think for me, it's sometimes just telling myself to get out the way, because one of the things
mm,
I was reminded, I'm thinking about gender specifically.
mm.
I was reminded by a woman who I know and says, you know, you have a really big personality, you have like an aura about you, blah, blah, blah. I don't see myself that way, but that's their kind of, you know, how they view me. And so even if that's partly true, I need to be one aware of how that may come play out
Yeah.
in certain
Great point.
spaces, right? And number one, and number two, that means also not just standing there like taking up space. I mean,
Mm,
I'm already a big dude, right?
yeah.
That means sometimes I need to move,
Yeah.
get out the way,
Get
you
out
know,
the way.
literally to
Mhm.
make room for others. And it doesn't mean I need to make room for other dudes all the time, but
Mm,
it may be just making space for other ideas, thoughts, women, people
mhm,
from different experiences. And so it doesn't mean I neglect myself. It just means there's times where I need to just get out the way. So that's my way sometimes
mhm.
of being an ally, getting out the way.
Yeah, I love that because I think all of those things are true. I think the other way for me that I try to do it, leverage my presence in support of, because I sense this sometimes, like I'm specifically thinking of a former colleague who would say something and people would literally just walk over whatever she said. Yeah, and it was, and I could see it in her face. I mean, because it was disheartening. It's like that was important, and a lot of times I'd be like, "Hey," I'm like, "Hold on." I'm like, "I think she just said something really important that we need to hear, and maybe think about and address." And so, you know, I could I try to use the power, the privilege that I had in support of her or other folks in other communities. I mean, I've had, LGBTQIA colleagues as well, you know, who equally feel like their voices aren't heard, where I've tried to at least say, hey, here's my part, or here's something that I think is important. And I think it goes back to when we were talking about communities coming together too. You know, it's in support of them, but it's also in terms of bonding around like and collaborating around like how does this impact all communities? I mean, it's so I think that's how I've tried to do it.
Yeah. Oh, cool. Appreciate that. So I've been trying to make sure we leave room for Kevin Hart. Not that we need to go deep on the brother, but we giving him side eye because it's been coming out a little more fierce about people's criticism.
Yeah.
One of which I think we brought up last time that all the writers for the roast were all white.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's
No,
what
we talked about that.
Che from Michael Che from SNL said that if you look
Okay.
at all the writers, it
Mm,
tells you problem number one.
right.
Because I guess the host, whose name escapes me right now, he was the one who was responsible for bringing the writers
Okay.
for this thing. And so I think what I've been seeing online, you tell me what you've been seeing, but I think Kevin Hart's been getting I think a respectable and reasonable amount of heat and
Mm-hmm.
side eye
Mm,
because of
okay.
how he laughed during these inappropriate jokes.
Mm-hmm.
For me, though, the best part was when Little Man plays the pimp. Cat Williams
Cat
came out.
yeah,
That was the best part, and probably the only part I
right.
enjoyed.
Right.
Rest of it was bull.
Mm-hmm.
But just watching Kevin just like you said, kind of stepping fetching it the whole
Yeah.
time, and I'm like, and I guess I'm disappointed because I think he knows better. This isn't
Yeah.
Kanye. This is at least it doesn't seem like it, because I don't think he's gonna turn around and
Like
put a MAGA hat
his
on.
bipolar ain't kicked
Yeah,
in.
he don't have the excuse. His
Right.
mama didn't die recently.
Right.
He doesn't have a history of mental health issues. If anything, he's demonstrated that he's down for the cause with and even who he associates himself, with the exception of Snoop Dogg, who's kind of made he's kind of coming
Reversal.
back
Right.
from his
Problematic.
thing.
Hmm.
But so I'm just like, "Ugh, this is
Yeah.
so bad."
Yeah. But it is, and it's so bad on multiple levels. I mean, there's a piece of for me about Kevin Hart that feels like all money is good money, and at least again, right or wrong, my impression is this falls in line with that kind of any money is good money, and so you're going to and again to smile in the face of like some shit, even if it was like don't smile, be like cock your head and be like, that was kind of questionable. I mean, it's yeah. And again, the difference between Kevin Hart and them young kids that we were talking about before around the NAACP is Kevin Hart's a grown ass man,
Grown with
right?
kids, been
Grown,
married
grown.
multiple
Right,
times.
exactly. I'm like, and you can choose to do whatever, but there is a count to be had for the choices that you're making, and so I think the heat that he's getting, this heat that Stephen A was getting, frankly, from my perspective, is deserved because you either allowed this to happen, were complicit in this happening, or just weren't aware and awake enough to be like, yeah, this is problematic, you know.
I wanna give him the benefit of the doubt, whereas with Stephen A, I just know who we dealing with, so it was like, "Alright, whatever, Stephen A." With Kevin Hart, I don't know if contractually I know it's written in his contract where he can't say anything, but it seems to me, and it's not too late. Let's be clear, it's not too late. He's
Right,
not unredeemable here.
right.
He
No,
could come out tomorrow and say, after further thought and prayer with my family and my minister, I believe it's important to come out and share my deep felt apology for the impact this event has had on many people. Something to that effect. You
I'm
know,
sorry goes a long way.
I mean, we kind of started off with that,
You
right?
started right, right. But
Just
to
say
own
I'm
it,
sorry.
just say I'm sorry. You're like, and the other piece to me, KP, that would make it different would also be an acknowledgement of in the moment, because this has happened to me. In the moment, kind of caught up in something, and I'm not really thinking deeper about something, but afterward, I'm like, hell no. I'm like, that was
We've
fucked
all
up,
been there. We've all
right?
been there.
I'm like, if
Laughed at
he
a
if
joke
he
that was
came back and he
inappropriate.
said something on those lines, it's like, you know what? I was there. I was in the moment. I wasn't really. I was listening, but I wasn't listening. I was on something else. And
I
after
was on
further
some
review,
shit.
I was and afterward, I kind of sat back and I've watched it. I've listened. It hit me a different way. That was fucked up. It was super racist, and I want to apologize for my part in it, but I also want to call out, you know, a lot of that shit was in bad taste, you know, and shouldn't have been done or said, you know.
And then end it with thank you Netflix for the check. I appreciate it.
Right. And thank you for much. Right.
'Cause you ain't
Right.
gonna give it
Exactly.
back.
I ain't giving that check back.
That money was been spent.
Right. A long time ago. But because I just think that kind of ownership would go such a long way, or at least I hope it would go a long way toward creating some level of healing.
Then
Because it
'cause
wasn't just, let me say, just let's say this. The harm of that wasn't just to Kevin Hart. The harm was also a community harm. And that piece, I think we need to acknowledge, I mean, because that as people of color, I think similar things happen for women, other racialized groups in this country in particular. When these things happen, there's a collective harm. Even if I don't know directly that it was there is a collective harm because the perpetuation of the stereotype and the BS continues and permeates, throughout the world. And so yeah, I'm a belabor, but I think there's just something that there's an action on his part that needs to happen.
yeah, yeah.
Oh, and
We'll
by the way,
see.
as far as I know, none of these comedians have come out and apologized for their sets that I have seen.
Nah, nah, I mean, some of them, I mean, there was, Sharon, I forget her last name. She used to be on The View. She has some really strong statements. So I'm not sure she had anything to apologize for. I mean,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, but I mean, she was there. So I mean, and a few other folks were there. I don't know. We'll see. But we're running out of time, unfortunately. So I want to get to our celebration card,
Mm.
and it's just you and me. So you I gotta pick you, and you gotta pick me. But what I think I've learned about you is blank. The thing I wasn't aware that you were not about the slapstick comedy. I mean, no. First of all, I know not everyone likes Borat, so that was an easy one. But hear more about the things that you find funny. I learned that about you, so I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, what did I learn new about you today? Actually, it's funny you said that. I wouldn't have thought you were a slapstick comedy dude. I'm like,
It's
I could now, like I could see you about the romantic comedy. I'm
yes.
like, KP got low key lover vibe. I'm like, KP a lover. I can see that. I can totally see that. I'm like, yeah. You laid up in the cut with your lady, watching a little romantic comedy, being like, right, 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 right. being like vibing on that, being like, that was so funny. Like Borat?
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
love the movie, but I watched it the first time. It was just ridiculous. It was so stupid. Yeah, yeah. I don't know why. You know what it is? I grew up with the Three Stooges, and I enjoyed that for
I
some
used I
reason.
used to love the Three Stooges as a kid. That one. Although the Little Rascals was more my thing,
Yeah, Little Rascals, all right. I mean,
which had a little slapstick. Although there's some low key racist stuff going on in there too, but that's a whole nother show. Right, right. Yeah, Buckwheat. I don't love Buckwheat. And can I just say, I know we got to go. When Eddie Murphy did Buckwheat,
back in the day, I wasn't a fan
man,
either.
that
I
shit
wasn't.
bothered me to no
Yeah.
end. I'm like, especially because I then would have white people coming up to me trying to quote Buckwheat, and I'm like, I want to knock you the fuck out. Like, don't quote that.
I much preferred when he did Gumby.
Now Gumby is hilarious. I'm Gumby, damn it. Now that
With the whole accent and everything.
right
Yeah,
now that was fun.
Buckwheat was
Buckwheat,
just
Buckwheat it was
uncomfortable.
dramatic. Yeah. It was uncomfortable. I was like, oof. I'm like, yeah, there's something wrong with this. I'm like,
Well, and the thing is, I mean, it's kinda like our conversation about Kevin Hart and the other comedians we've talked about before is like, this belief that all comedy is tolerated, and I'm like, I
yeah.
don't think that's true. I think there's a point where you should be like, and maybe you made a poor choice initially, and maybe it was funny, it seemed in the moment. And when you
Hmm.
looked at it again, it was still funny, but
Right,
here we are, and it's
right.
not funny.
It's not funny. It's not
But,
funny.
well, hey, appreciate you, man. This is Riffing While Black. This is Gazika Prince with my friend, Dr. Lawrence James. Look at your name so I can make sure I say it right.
It's like, what is
Because you leave it to me. I mean, I know our friend Catherine for I don't know how long, and I still was messing up her name. So
Helms?
Helms.
Helms. All right. The Helms is, oh my God.
Well, appreciate you, brother. It's good seeing you. It's been a couple weeks, but we should be back next week, continue the conversation. Riffing While
Absolutely.
Black.
We'll see you then. Peace.